The time for silence is over.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
I came here to speak on behalf of Donald Trump.
Do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them, what do you want to call them? Very fine people on both sides.
And for the white Christian people of this nation.
Oh, give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
White
supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by.
In fourth degree, you get arrested or in a serious violent fight for the cause. Yes. I'm taking the low road. I'm punching them in the face. So that.
I attacked a couple guys. Very fine people on both sides.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
So I punched him in the face and I ripped his mask off. And then I punched him again.
President Trump retweeted a video showing a supporter making a racist statement.
White power! White power!
Very fine people on both sides.
And Hitler doing it wrong! No!
Fuck no!
Reset of the truth of life. Remember it. Yes, the time's right.
But how do you stop these people? You can't.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists?
There's not.
Do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Very fine people on both sides.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silent. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition. Hello and welcome to The Left Speaks. This will be episode 5. It's October the 11th and the election is closing in on us. Now, I apologize for not having a content warning. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the show. I know some of that was not easy to watch. It was even harder to research and edit. Most of that is from the 2017 Unite the Right rally. It was ostensibly organized to protest against the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The majority of the people who showed up, who defined themselves as the alt-right, who coined the term alt-right, Richard Spencer, who you saw in the video, the avowed white nationalist Richard Spencer, leader of one of the Nazi parties in America, Richard Spencer, helped organize it. The other gentleman you saw consistently throughout the video was Gavin McInnes, who founded the Proud Boys that Trump seems to have no problem with, and as you saw directly from his own mouth, advocates violence. To move up within their ranks, you have to commit violence. Let that sink in for a minute. We're not talking about a group of people that show up planning to peacefully protest. Most people who join any organization intend to move up within that organization. There are some exceptions, sure, but most people who take even a basic job, whether it's at a gas station or a school, don't plan to stay at the very bottom. They plan to move up. And to move up within the Proud Boys, one of the requirements, among many others, is that you commit acts of political violence. That specifically, along with other generic white supremacist groups, is who Trump was unable to condemn during the first presidential debate. The Torchlight rally was from Charlottesville, Virginia. That wasn't clipped out of context. That wasn't some movie or some old Nazi footage that I cut and put into place. That's who was actually there and who was actually protesting. I'll be happy after this video is finalized and the live show is over to post a link to another YouTuber named Sean, who has about an hour and a half, 2 hour piece of research that walks you through everything that happened at the Unite the Right rally. Now, for clarity, I do not think and am not saying that all conservatives are Nazis or racist or support this kind of stuff. I know that's not the case. I used to be conservative myself, as I've mentioned several times before on this show. I have several conservative friends, several conservative colleagues, several conservative coworkers who I get along with very well. We have political discussions back and forth all the time. There are benefits, without a doubt, to conservative values that are preached, though I don't think that they're practiced by the current Republican Party. But I can see the benefit in smaller government, in less red tape, in fiscal responsibility. Again, I don't think the current Republican government is advocating those policies, but that's a different discussion. The people who identify as conservative, you ask them why, generally those are the answers you get. I believe in smaller government. I want the government out of my way to do my own thing. We need a strong military for the defense of this country, but past that, the government can get the hell out of the way. This is not that. We have never had an issue with a president or a presidential candidate coming out and saying white supremacists and neo-Nazis, I don't want their votes. We have never had a problem with a president coming out and saying, these are not my people. This was wrong. For those of you who have forgotten the way that the Charlottesville protest ended, one of the members of the alt-right who was there protesting on the side of Richard Spencer and former head of the KKK, David Duke, who also helped organize it and spoke at it, one of those supporters took his car and drove it into a counter-protesting crowd. You know, the people that showed up to say, we don't want Nazis here. We don't want the KKK here. And a lady died, was murdered. Several other counter-protesters were injured. We have not had a presidential candidate or a president in the past that has had a problem condemning groups that advocate using violence for political purposes, which, as you saw, direct from the horse's mouth, the founder of the Proud Boys, is one of their requirements. This shouldn't be a conservative or a liberal issue. This is an American issue. These are not your values. They're not my values. But the fact that you're standing next to them or considering supporting a man that stands next to them, or at least can't say that he doesn't stand with them, is a big problem. I know it sounds ludicrous. I know it sounds ridiculous that there are literal neo-Nazis running around and that a president can't condemn them. I know when you hear it on the news back in 2017, the first thing that pops into your head is, oh, this is just fake. There's no way this can be real. The news has got to be blowing this out of proportion. Nazis are something you saw in the 1930s and 40s, and then since then, pretty much only in Indiana Jones movies. That was a couple of years ago. That was live footage. Those were their chance. Talking about how they won a race war. Talking about how they're worried about getting replaced. Talking about how they support Donald Trump because they think he speaks to those issues. Now, again, I don't remotely believe that everybody who supports Donald Trump is a Nazi or an out and out avowed racist or even a closeted racist. I think the majority of people who support Donald Trump are good American people who are too damn busy to really dive into these issues and look at it. I think the majority of American people who support Donald Trump basically like the idea that he came out and said whatever was on his mind. Or at least that's the way it appeared to be. I think the people who supported Donald Trump, for the most part, identify as conservative, like me, are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, like me, have a family, and like me initially, if they hear the news say that there's Nazis at a protest, kind of roll their eyes in the back of their head and go, oh yeah, sure there are. I'm not living in an Indiana Jones movie. I mean, come on. This problem was solved quite a few decades ago, guys. But yet there it is, in color. And then I think that the majority of conservatives can see these clips throughout the course of the years. Not back to back, but throughout the course of the years. And then see Donald Trump the next day, or the day before, or a couple of days later, explain that that's not what he really meant. Don't forget that a day or two before his very fine people on both sides of this thing, quote, he condemned the Nazi violence there. And then he walked it back. Don't forget that after he tweeted his supporter chanting white power, that he then deleted it after being up for a day or two. Don't forget that after the presidential debate, when he told the far right, violence in politics advocating group known as the Proud Boys to stand by, that the next day, during an interview, he claimed he had no knowledge of who the Proud Boys were and that somebody would have to tell him. And then he told him to stand down. The point of this is, you can pick what you want to hear. You're a normal American citizen, odds are. I'll assume that, just like I'm a normal American citizen. So when you hear that he wants to walk it back, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I don't blame you. I remind you that we've never had this problem before, multiple times during one administration or one campaign, but it's spaced out. But for a minute, instead of thinking like a normal average American citizen that believes in freedom and that believes in democracy and that isn't a member of the KKK and doesn't care to see Nazis have any sort of power in this government, pretend for a minute that you did. Pretend for a minute that you were out and out racist. Pretend for a minute that you did think, and I quote from the Unite the Right rally, that Hitler did nothing wrong. Pretend for a minute that you think these things. And that since the 1930s, 1940s, no presidential candidate in this country has ever spoken to you, has ever said, hey, y'all ain't so bad. Hey, you guys need to stand by to see how this election goes. Oh, we should shoot the bad guys? And the bad guys are those, everybody to the left of us? Yeah, that's pretty funny. I can't say that, but y'all can say that down here in Texas in the Panhandle, because that's the rest of that quote, by the way. Hey, Mr. President, can you condemn white supremacists? Well, I don't know who you're talking about. Can you give me a specific group? As if white supremacist isn't specific enough. People who think that the white race is the supreme race above all the others. This shouldn't be a difficult question. But apparently it was. But pretend for a minute that you and I aren't average Americans, but that we actually believed all that nonsense that we just watched. You've got a man as president, and when he was running his campaign, that for the first time in 60 years has refused to condemn your movement, has told groups that are allied with you, because I don't care whether the Proud Boys are white supremacists themselves, they're hanging out with them, as we just saw. But instead of condemning your group that believes all this crazy nonsense and marches by torchlight at night, you know, just like they did back in 1930s Germany. No, there's a president that won't condemn you, that will tell your friends to stand by in case the election doesn't go his way, that calls your protest very fine people and equates you with the people that are protesting against you. How is this okay? How is this okay with you? How is this normal conservative values? How does this have anything to do with small government and fiscal responsibility? And a strong military to protect us? You know, I seem to recall there was a point in time when we used that really big, strong military to protect us from that mess. Now, the next line of defense I normally hear from conservatives: oh, the very fine people line, you're taking it out of context. He wasn't talking about the Nazis and the KKK at the rally. He was talking about all the other people. Okay, when I was a conservative, if I showed up to protest anything, hell, even now that I'm not a conservative, if I show up to protest something and out of ignorance didn't realize it was organized by the KKK and neo-Nazi groups, and I walk up, me and my girlfriend, maybe my kid, you know, because we're just going to carry some signs and chant whatever. If I see a big crowd of Nazis on my side and people wearing white pointed hoods, I'm not staying. And I don't think any other very fine individuals are staying either. And I'm sure as hell not staying and standing next to a bunch of damn Nazis and KKK members to protest the removal of a statue. This isn't some life or death issue here. So exactly what very fine individuals do you think stayed on that side? I could see staying to protest the Nazis, to protest against the KKK. I'd send my kid with my girlfriend back home. I'm not going to keep them there for that mess, because as we've seen, those groups advocate political violence. And I don't want my family involved in that mess. So I can see very fine individuals on one side of this, but I sure as hell can't see it on both. I don't know any very fine people that are staying and standing next to the KKK and freaking neo-Nazi groups that I would consider very fine individuals after they did that. Not a one. And if you do, then maybe you need to re-examine your definition of what a good person is. And that's my problem with this. With this whole election and this whole scenario. I don't think Trump's some leader of the neo-Nazi party in America. I don't think Trump's some member of the Proud Boys. I think he might be a bigot. But Trump is way too much about himself to put any group and any organization above what Trump wants. But I'll be damned if I'm going to stand by and support somebody that's comfortable asking these guys for their support. Because what they want and what I want are completely at odds. I know when I was conservative, and I know my friends that are conservative now, if I ask them, they're going to want a lot of the same things I do. They're going to want liberty. They believe that all citizens in this country were created equal. They want democracy. They want freedom. The guys that Trump can't condemn, they don't believe those things. They don't believe everybody was created equal, you know, as it says in our Constitution. They believe that white people were created superior. That's why it's called white supremacy. So they sure as hell don't want equality. They don't want democracy because that's leading to equality. And by definition, if everybody gets a vote, then everybody's equal if everybody gets one vote. So they're sure as hell not in favor of that. And what kind of democracy functions with violence? With political violence? We're talking about two entirely separate things here, guys. If you want to complain about Black Lives Matter protests that turned into riots that burned down a grocery store, that's not remotely on the same level as these whack jobs up in Michigan that just this week tried to kidnap the governor of Michigan in order to overthrow the government of Michigan to secure political power. That's a coup. There's a difference between burning down a store because you're stupid and violent and committing acts of political violence. I can condemn both. But if I have to pick, I would much rather deal with the guy that burns down a grocery store than the guy that's trying to overthrow governments by force. The guy that burns down a grocery store is going to go to jail. Worst case, I never see him again, and I'm left with a grocery store that I have to rebuild. The guy that takes over the government doesn't go away. And if he succeeds in taking over the government, then I don't get to ignore him. Now, again, I don't think all Republicans are advocating for this. But there is a very large and very loud segment of the conservative group in America right now that is advocating this. And there is a much larger group of conservatives who aren't condemning it. And if you condemn it and don't act against it, well, we learned in the 1930s that doesn't work. You can't appease fascism. France and Britain both tried that with Germany. They always want more. And if you're standing on the same side as Nazis, maybe you need to stop and look in the mirror and wonder why. Oh, it's because Black Lives Matter and communism and anti-fascism and that. A, I don't think communism is remotely possible in this country. B, I wouldn't want it, even if it was. C, in 1941, when we went to war with Germany, we were on the same side as the Soviet Union, the literal communist. We teamed up with communists to defeat fascists, to defeat Nazis. We sent young men overseas to die supporting the Soviet Union to defeat fascism. And you're telling me you can't vote against this? Are you serious right now? Look at how bad it's gotten. Look at how far they've drug your party to the right. The first Republican elected president after the war was General Eisenhower. You know, the guy that led that fight against the Nazis. The guy that met the Russians, you know, those commie Russians, since you're so scared of communists, that met them in Germany and celebrated victory over fascists. Nobody is asking you this time to go overseas yourself. Nobody is asking you this time to send your sons and daughters overseas. All anybody is asking you to do is to quit supporting the guy that can't say consistently, those guys are wrong. Nazis are wrong. The KKK is wrong. I don't want their support. Those are not my people. Those are not very fine people. The people who were there protesting against Nazis, yeah, those are the people I want on my side. Guys, this is one of the easiest decisions you should ever have to make in your lifetime. Seriously. I don't give a damn what other policies are out there that you really care about right now. Because if there isn't a democracy at the end of all of this, and if you go watch the last couple of episodes, Trump's already been joking for years about running for multiple terms, more than 2. He's already made the comment that the problem with elections is ballots, and if you didn't have ballots, you wouldn't have to worry about transferring power, which is, you know, why he's apparently incapable of committing to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses. It doesn't matter what policies you find important. Because if there isn't a democracy left, then nobody has to listen to you. If you can't vote against the guy that can't condemn this, then you need to take a real long, hard look in the mirror and wonder why. And you need to have a damn good answer to that question. Because we already decided as a nation back in the 40s, 60 years ago now, that we weren't interested in allying with fascists and with Nazis. We already decided we were a better people than that. And we decided, even with as pro-capitalism as we are in this country, that it was worth teaming up with communists to defeat fascists. And we decided as a nation that it was worth risking our blood, our lives, sacrificing our blood and our lives and our money and our steel and our bullets and ammunition and bombs, and sending money and bullets and food and tanks to the communists to help them help us defeat fascism. And you're being asked to vote Democrat. And this is something you can't fathom? This is something you can't consider? You want to talk about the greatest generation? And the reason we call them that? It's because they stood up to that. They stood up to this nonsense. As you can tell, I've been banging the desk a little bit too hard at this point. I'm sorry, I'm getting animated. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that this country has managed to consistently tell the American people that both sides are equal when right now they're not. There was absolutely a point in our history and in our relatively recent history where both sides had valid points. This is not that. This is not the conservative values you've been told you've been voting for years. And if you didn't expect it before the last election, hey, we're all working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Those of us that are still working since we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So I understand, and nobody's going to shame you for it. But now, when you know what to expect, when he's had multiple chances over the course of years and cannot consistently condemn white supremacy and fascism, cannot consistently condemn political violence when it's on his side, and not even not consistently condemn it, consistently, accidentally misspeak, accidentally mistweet. You know how many times, me personally, I've accidentally tweeted out of some random dude screaming white power? Do you know how many times I've accidentally shared a piece of Nazi propaganda? 0. And I'm not the president. You know how many times I've accidentally showed up at a neo-Nazi protest? 0. Do you know how many times I've been unable to condemn white supremacy on the spot? 0. And if you're a conservative, I'll ask you right now, do you support the KKK? Do you want fascism in this country? Do you support political violence to further conservative causes? Do you support Nazis? And I'm willing to bet right now that you were able to answer no. I'm not in favor of, and I don't support any of those things. And you were probably thinking, Mr. Chris, you can go to hell for asking. And my point is, you're supporting a president who has to think about what his answers to those things is going to be. So I'm asking, how are you supporting that guy? If I have a friend who has to think about which side of a protest he's going to be on, the side with the Nazis or the side against the Nazis, I'm not going to have that friend for very long. There are certain things that we shouldn't have to think about in this country. And this should be one of them. And if the leader of your party has to think about it, one of two things, in my opinion, has to happen. Either you need to not be a member of that party, or you need to make sure he's not. Those are about the only two choices I see. Because you don't get to compromise with fascists. History has shown us that. And in both of those two choices, not being a member of the Republican Party, or making sure he's not a member of the Republican Party if you want to stay a member of the Republican Party, both of those can be accomplished by voting. Both of them. And hey, if you can't stomach a vote for a Democrat, write in Ronald Reagan for all I care. I'm not telling you can't be conservative. We can have disagreements over those issues. I'm not telling you can't be conservative and still be a good American. We can disagree about policy all day long. What we don't get to disagree about is whether there should be violence in politics to further our goals in a democracy, and whether or not we're going to keep being a democracy. And again, just this week, the FBI already arrested 6 individuals in Michigan trying to overthrow and kidnap the governor of Michigan. So I know it sounds crazy, but apparently we're living in crazy times. If you'd asked me 4 years ago, 5 years ago, if this election would have come down to this kind of discussion, I would have thought you were crazy. What kind of political candidate in the United States of America, on a national level stage, mind you, has an issue with condemning white supremacy, the KKK, political violence, and neo-Nazis? I wouldn't have thought that you could get a candidate at that stage, at the national level, that had to think about how he was going to answer those kinds of questions. Guys, this isn't conservatism. He does not remotely represent the core values that you believe in. Conservatives of all stripes have been able to condemn this kind of stuff. There's a reason that there are so many Republicans that are launching campaigns telling you that they can't vote for Trump, but they're still Republicans. Go look at some of the work the Lincoln Project has put out. Go look at some of the individuals that are posting their stories about why they can no longer vote for Trump on Republican voters against Trump. This isn't a Democrat or Republican thing right now. If we're playing a game of basketball and there are two teams, we'll call them the Democrats and we'll call them the Republicans. And we, the voters, are the referee here. If they're both playing the same game and they're playing fair and they're playing in the rules, then by all means call it even. But when the head coach of one team can't tell his players to play fair and keeps putting his most violent players on the court and then is unable to tell them that they should quit punching the other team in the face, you got to call foul on that player and that coach. And you got to eject him out of the game. Nobody's saying that after this election, you can't go back to voting Republican. Nobody's calling you a racist because you voted for Trump last time. Nobody is calling you a Nazi or a member of the KKK. Nobody. What we're saying is your head coach right now can't tell those guys to stop. Can't say that what they're doing is wrong. And that we as the American people, we've got to eject him out of the game. Because there won't be a game left if we're not careful. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back and address comments, see if we have anybody on the line, and then dive into the second topic. Thank you for your time. we're back. So let's address some comments. Trump has condemned white supremacists. I already admitted that. I said that first thing during the show. I don't think Trump's a member of the Nazi Party. I don't think Trump's a member of the KKK. I don't think Trump is a white supremacist himself. I think he's probably a bigot, but that's neither here nor there. Plenty of past presidents have been. It's not ideal. But you can go back to Democrat and conservative candidates who've run in the past and been elected in the past and find plenty of bigots. What I have said, and what I said specifically in this show, is that he is not consistent in his condemnation of white supremacists, and that you can pick and choose and find what you want to believe. And if you are a normal, average conservative, then you listen to the sides and the pieces where he says, oh, yes, I condemn white supremacists. And that if you're a white supremacist or a fascist, you listen to the side where he says there are very fine people on both sides, that there are good individuals. That this fascist organization needs to stand by in case the election doesn't go my way. That the President of the United States retweeted one of his supporters saying white power multiple times. And that if you already hold those kind of views, then this is confirmation to you that the president holds them as well. And again, we're not talking about a one-time incident. We are talking about incidents that have happened multiple times. So yes, Trump has condemned white supremacy at times. He has not done it consistently. Trump has also supported white supremacy. If you assume that a tweet saying white power multiple times is a support of white supremacy, then he's also supported it at times as well. If you consider support of political violence, telling a fascist group to stand by when the leader of that organization and founding member of it at the time advocated for political violence, and it is a requirement to move up in that group, then yes, he's supported political violence. To go to something else you said, Biden hasn't condemned. Hold on, let me find it here. I apologize. The organizer of a liberal protest in Yorba Linda, which I assume is the city in California, drove her car into a crowd of counter-protesters intentionally, and Biden has not condemned the group for this action. He has said that he does not condone violent protest. So my question to you, to put him on equivalent footing, would be, did he tell that group to stand by in case the election didn't go his way? Is that an organization that I can find the founding member of advocating violence for? Can I sign up to join that organization? And does that organization have ranks that I can move up in? Or was it just a situation where somebody committed violence that also said, hey, here's a rally? Again, I'm not in favor of political violence on either side, so quit trying to pretend like I am. Can you provide the quotes of Biden saying those things where he came out and said, hey, those people in Yorba Linda that killed some people, y'all need to stand by in case this election doesn't go my way, guys? When they asked Biden to condemn that violence, did he have to hesitate and think about what his answer was going to be? Did he have to get asked the question multiple times before he could finally answer it? And per the FBI, Antifa is not even an organization. The reason for that is There's not somebody that's in charge of it that me as some random individual can go to and sign up with. You know, like I could do for the KKK, or like I could do for these neo-Nazi groups, or like I can do for the Proud Boys. There's not ranks in Antifa where I get to move up. Is there some leader of Antifa that I'm unaware of and that the FBI is unaware of? But apparently President Trump and all the conservative members of this country that are backing him know the name of? But it's super top secret, so you can't provide it? What about the 2 cops that were shot during a protest? I'm not in favor of that. See how hard that was? I didn't have to be asked the question 20 times. I didn't have to stop and think about it and go, you know, there's good murderers on both sides. How come I can do that as an individual, but the leader of the Republican Party right now can't? How come his story changes back and forth and back and forth? How come he flip-flops on this topic constantly? And why are you okay with it? Why are you backing it? Why are you supporting it? Because a vote for him is a vote for the continuation of this kind of stuff. And this is why I said, again, before the break, you can remain conservative. I'm fine with that. The United States remained capitalist after World War II. General Eisenhower ran as a conservative after teaming up with literal communists to defeat fascism. But this is a cancer in the Republican Party that is literally rearing its ugly head at the top. And I still only see 2 choices. Either you kick him out of the party, so you vote against him, or you leave the party and vote for somebody else. At this point, I don't see other options. Not saying you can't come back to it. Not saying you can't get rid of him and remain a conservative. We can disagree on policy all day long. But if you want to sit here and try and create or equate fascism with anything else that we're seeing in this country right now, I don't think you're being honest. Will I condemn the whole group? By whole group, I assume you mean all conservatives, for the actions of an individual, as I did at Charlottesville. I don't have to. The murder in Charlottesville didn't have to take place for me to condemn neo-Nazis and KKK members. Are you serious right now? Let's pretend for a minute that the guy had never driven his car into the counter-protesters. And that all that had happened was a bunch of chants of Jews will not replace us, blood and soil, and race war now. Are you telling me that it's out of bounds for me to condemn that group? Look, I know this is your sports team and you're committed to it, But let's at least be honest and realistic right now, guys. There didn't have to be violence at Charlottesville for me to condemn that group. And I'm not the president. Think about what you're saying. Seriously. As I mentioned earlier, if I show up for a protest, even if it's a cause that I believe in, and I'm on the same side of that protest as a bunch of neo-Nazis and KKK members, I'm not staying. I'm not. If I show up to that protest, I'm going to the other side of the fence and standing with the other guys, even if I disagree with some of their politics. And you need to look at why you're not doing that. We decided in this country 60 years ago that we stand united against fascism, not that we vote for it. And we decided 60 years ago that you could stand against fascism and still come back and run as a Republican. So when BLM went into white neighborhoods and shouted on bullhorns that white people needed to leave their homes and give them to black people, will you condemn BLM to that? Sure, I'll condemn those individuals. But again, BLM's not an organization that I can sign up with and move up in the ranks. It's not an organization that advocates for political violence. Any protest is going to have some people that are out there that rally from Charlottesville. Do you think I just pulled some people from it? Has Biden asked BLM to stand by in case the election doesn't go his way? I guess the bigger problem is, here's what I'm looking at. This is Business Insider. Obviously fake news and a liberal rag, totally in support of socialism and communism. I mean, you can tell from the name Business Insider and from the, the stock prices right up at the top. I mean, it just screams communism. Over the last 25 years, right-wing extremists have killed 329 victims. Antifa members haven't killed any. Now, that's July 31st, 2020. There's probably been some violence attributed in the last, couple months. It's a long way to go to catch up, guys. And again, I'm not advocating violence for either side. But the other thing I'm looking at, okay, anti-fascists linked to 0 murders in the United States in the last 25 years. This is from the United Kingdom, from the Daily Mail, which is a conservative news site over there. 26 million Americans at over 4,700 demonstrations around the country for Black Lives Matter. At least 1,360 counties in the United States. 40%. So forgive me for being generous, but we'll just say half the country. Geographically, mind you, half the country. And 26 million individuals. You expect me to believe that this is some hierarchical organization where I can join and move up in the ranks, that's committed to political violence and has been now for months, and they can reach half the country where's the half the country that's burning down? Okay, let's go see where the half the country is that's burning down. Fox News. Again, business. So you can tell it's communism, right? The damage from riots and looting across the United States is $1 billion to $2 billion. That sounds like a lot of money. Because I'm not rich. I'll never see $1 billion in my lifetime. Let's compare that to, I don't know, since it's nationwide across half the country, let's look at a company that would deal with that, across the country. So if we compare it to walkout theft from Walmart in 2017, Walmart will have lost $4 billion from people walking out with deodorant and sandwiches and milk that they shoplifted and didn't pay for. There's more damage caused by shoplifting at just Walmart alone by an order of 2. Over twice as much damage than all this left and right, or all this left wing burning the country down that I'm supposed to be scared of. In an organization where I can't sign up and move up in the ranks with 26 million individuals that don't all get their orders from one guy, that was founded as an anti-police violence movement, versus the Proud Boys, whose founder we have on record saying was founded to commit political violence. And you're trying to equate these two things? Half as much economic damage as shoplifting sandwiches. 26 million individuals. Show me the clips where Biden's coming out saying it's okay to shoot cops. Show me the clips where Biden's coming out saying it's okay to commit political violence. Show me the clips where Biden's coming out telling whoever Antifa is, since nobody's ever been able to point at the leader and the FBI says, there isn't one, that's why it's not an organization. But show me the clips where he's telling Antifa to stand by in case the election doesn't go his way. I'll wait. Show you the clip where Trump said it's okay to drive a car into protesters? Where neo-Nazis and KKK members were the only members out there protesting at that rally. And he said there's very fine people on both sides. I don't know any neo-Nazi members or KKK members I would describe as very fine people. I also don't know any organizations that advocate political violence as a means to advance their agenda that I would tell to stand by if I ran for office. When I was in the military, stand by does not mean stand down. Doesn't mean anything close. If I told my infantry company to stand by, that's not telling them to unload their weapons. That's not telling them to take off their uniforms and go on R&R and hit the beach because the mission's done. And you would be losing your mind if Biden was doing the same thing, and you know it. You'd be throwing all that in my face, but you ain't got it. This guy's different. Hell, go show me George Bush doing that. Show me George Bush telling the KKK or calling the KKK and neo-Nazis very fine people. I'll wait. Show me Ronald Reagan doing that. Show me Ronald Reagan naming a group that advocates political violence to advance its cause. Show me him on national television telling them to stand by in case he didn't win re-election. Show me General Eisenhower doing that. I'm not saying, again, in case you missed it during the beginning of the show, that all conservatives are racist. I don't think most of them are. I think most of them are sick of hearing about it. I think most of them are tired of being told that they've got to watch what they say because somebody might get offended. And I get that. I think most of them look at themselves and go, I don't hate black people. I don't hate Mexican people. I don't hate Honduran people. So surely this isn't a problem anymore. What are all those people over there screaming about? I just want them to shut up. And let's get back to business as usual. Because it's not a problem as far as I can see. And I don't think, as I said before, but to reiterate again, since apparently it was already missed once, so we'll say it for the third or the fourth time, I don't think Trump's a white nationalist. I don't think Trump's a neo-Nazi. I don't think Trump's a member of the KKK. I think he's fine with courting their votes. And I think he has a problem condemning them because to him, their votes are more important than condemning their message. And we'll rephrase that, consistently condemning, because he flip-flops back and forth between I condemn it or I'll tweet out white power. I'll say it's a bad thing or I'll send out white power messages on a national level platform. Show me the conservative and liberal politicians before this. And I'm not talking some fringe candidate that never stood a chance. We're talking a major party candidate here that won the nomination and ran for president or was running for re-election. That told a group that advocated for political violence to stand by for the results of the election. This is not normal. This is not conservatism. These are not conservative values. And you're better than allying with this. You should be further from them than you are from me. And that's the problem I have right now. That you have demonized liberals and Democrats in this country to such an extent that you are more comfortable standing closer to those guys than you are to me. This shouldn't be a left-right thing any more than coronavirus COVID-19 should be a left-right thing. This is something that should be a universal condemnation from all Americans that shouldn't take any hesitation. But you've turned it political because it's on your side. I am implying what his meaning is. He did not actually say those words. I've said multiple times he tweeted out a supporter that was chanting white power. If my company Facebook page or my private Facebook page was filled with people chanting white power, if I were telling the Black Panthers to stand by in case I didn't win my re-election campaign, then you might have a point. But since the courts have already defined his Twitter as part of the presidential record, an official form of communication that he's not supposed to actually delete, it's even worse than if he were just a private citizen tweeting this stuff. But I'm sorry, if I had a friend who had to constantly think about what his answer to fascism, white nationalism, neo-Nazi, and KKK views was, I would start to wonder what that friend actually believed. And then if that friend consistently flipped and flopped back and forth between they're very fine people and no, they're bad over the course of years, I don't think I would keep that friend very long. And this isn't a friend we're talking about. It's the President of the United States. I keep saying he said that stand by in case I don't win the election. He did not. He said stand back and stand by. I added the rest myself. What does the phrase mean to you? What exactly are they standing by for? Because they took it as a directive. Again, we can go to Business Insider because, you know, they're a liberal commie rag. You can tell by the word business, right? Multiple replies saying they're standing by. I guess they're standing by for pizza, cookies, and donuts. I'm sorry, I thought we were actually talking about a presidential debate that these comments were made in. You know, something that helps America decide who's going to be president. I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about the president who said that the problem with a peaceful transferal of power was the ballots, and if you didn't have ballots, you wouldn't have to worry about it. You know, the president who made those comments before that debate, because that was part of the news cycle. I don't recall Winston Churchill during the war against Nazi Germany making speeches about how the Nazis were very fine people, and then the next day saying they weren't. I don't recall FDR doing that either. Look at what you're trying to have to make excuses for right now. These aren't even your values. Are you advocating for political violence to make sure Trump gets reelected? Or if he doesn't get elected, to accomplish his maintaining of office? Are you okay with overriding ballots? Do you think ballots are the problems with elections? And that if you didn't have ballots, there wouldn't be a transfer of power, there'd just be a continuation? So we wouldn't have to worry about them? Do you think the problem with democracy is ballots? Do you think that both sides should start getting organizations standing by ready to commit violence? I mean, to go back to a previous episode, if all that matters is win, and those are the rules we're going to play by, well, I don't want to live in that kind of country. I don't think you do either. It doesn't matter what the phrase means to me. Nice duck. Your opinion is your opinion, and I do not represent it as anything else. Neither do I. I'm the host. My opinion is my opinion. You are the one who claimed that Trump said this. I thought you were the one that stuck with the facts and didn't embellish them to support an opinion. Those are the facts. Trump, during a presidential debate to decide, you know, who the American people should elect, told an organization that advocates for political violence to stand by. A couple of days before that, memory's fading me a little bit here, he couldn't commit to the peaceful transferal of power if he lost. and said that the problem with the election process was ballots, and that if you didn't have ballots, there wouldn't have to be a transferal of power. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't want to defend this behavior, but you want to defend your team. It doesn't matter what the phrase means to me. You're a voter. It matters. But even you won't try to defend it. You still have yet to defend it directly. All you've tried to do is point at the other side. Oh, but look, there's violence over there. And then when I point out the flaw in that thinking, oh, look, but you didn't directly word for word quote him. Okay, I put it in context. Now I've clarified it for you. I think the context makes it look worse, personally. But this is what I'm talking about. You're standing closer to this guy who's standing with those guys than you are to Democrats and liberals. And I think that's a problem. You would think that we are in danger of ballots being the problem. The DNC filed a lawsuit in Nevada to remove all of the security features, including signature verification from ballots in Nevada, from Democracy Docket. Okay. So I went to the BBC to get an overseas view on mail-in voting. Okay. And then I went to the studies they cited. Because I figured BBC's pretty neutral website. If you want me to take this seriously, you're going to have to show that there is a bigger voter fraud percentage than 0.0003 to 0.0025%. Literal human beings are involved. I do not expect perfection. We can aspire for it, but nothing humans touch is perfect. Now, what I will do is I will be happy to look at your source after the show is over and bring it up first thing next week, because it's not letting me copy it across right now. I apologize. But this is the research I'm basing off of. And the previous reports I've seen on voter fraud have been ludicrously hilarious when you actually dive into them. To give the example I came across most recently, these were the military ballots that were found in the trash in Pennsylvania, with most of them being Trump votes. This is from September the 24th. This was shared via a friend on Facebook. You look at the photo, it looks like there's several hundred. That's the icon that it gives you on Facebook to show the headline and what the article's about. I figured that might be a serious concern because I'd already done the research on voter fraud before this when the accusations were first being leveled, and it showed that it was at 0.0003%. Forgive me if I added an extra zero since you want to nitpick my quotes, but that's a lot of zeros to keep track of. The problem I have here, of the 9 ballots that were discarded, 7 were cast for President Trump. FBI personnel are involved with the Pennsylvania State Police investigating this. I don't know how much more seriously you want me to take it. There's 9 votes that are missing. We have the FBI, the literal FBI, investigating it. That seems in line with the 0.0003%. And we're taking it as seriously as we possibly can. To go back to my previous analogy, if I was the manager of a grocery store or a convenience store, and you told me that there was a massive problem with theft at that store, and I was taking it over, and I wouldn't be able to open it until I solved it, I wouldn't be able to run an election until I solved the problem, you would need to show me that there had been more that was stolen than a stick of bubble gum. Read the lawsuit at your leisure and respond next show if you want. It's a long read. Appreciate that. I will. The reason for the low incidence of mail-in voter fraud is because of the exact security measures that the DNC and the DNCC sued to remove. What does that say about their motivations? I don't know. I would have to go look and see why they actually sued to remove it. I know there's been tons of lawsuits over voter suppression this election. I mean, the governor of Texas just lost a lawsuit that said that he can't have one place per county where you can drop off your ballots. If that doesn't sound like trying to keep people from voting, I don't know what does. But without knowing the specifics of this case, obviously I can't speak to it directly. But like I said, I'll look into it for next week for you. Absolutely. As for what it says about their motivations, could be anything at this point. I'd have to go look and see if it was tied into voter suppression or if there was something that was causing a lot of these ballots to be discarded even though they were valid and we'd done research on it after the fact, or if it's a frivolous lawsuit that has nothing to do and was filed on behalf of the DNCC. I don't know. We already know there's bad actors, like the guys that were white supremacists that pretended to be the leader of Antifa on Twitter till the FBI caught them and exposed them. I believe it was the FBI. I'd have to go double check that too. So we know there's bad actors on both sides at this point. But again, if you want me to take voter fraud seriously to the point of not having a transfer of power, you're going to need to show that it's a bigger than 0.0003% chance of affecting anything. U.S. retailers lose an estimated 1.33% of revenues to shoplifting. They still open for business every day. I don't think you're seriously advocating for shutting down democracy and not having a transfer of power because of a 0.0003% problem. Not when Walmart can open every day at over 10, 20, 30, 40 times that kind of problem and still function. As always, I appreciate the conversation. I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. Honestly, I seriously think conservatives need to look in the mirror and decide whether this is the guy they want representing them. Whether they're more comfortable standing next to him, somebody who cannot consistently condemn fascism and Nazism and racism on a day-to-day basis, when I can go pick and choose which quote I want to listen to across a span of years, or whether they want to get rid of him as the head of their party. These are not conservative values. These were not the values of General Eisenhower. These were not the values of President Nixon, crook that he was. These are not the values of President Reagan. These are not the values of President Bush. These are not the values of his son, President Bush. And I don't think these are your values. I think if you pretend honestly for a minute that the Democrats were actually doing this, that President Biden had told the newly formed Black Panthers to stand back and stand by, that President Biden, former Vice President Biden, hopefully soon to be President Biden, had called KKK and neo-Nazi protesters very fine people. I think you would be rightfully pissed and throwing it in my face. All I'm trying to do is hold up a mirror right now. And if you don't like what you're seeing, you don't have to keep voting for it. There is nothing to stop you from voting against it this time and voting for the next conservative candidate next time. This is not a policy debate. This shouldn't be a debate. Thank you, everybody. I know it was a more difficult episode than normal. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you next week. The time for silence is over.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
I came here to speak on behalf of Donald Trump.
Do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. You want to call them, what do you want to call them? Very fine people on both sides.
and for the white Christian people of this nation.
Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by.
In fourth degree, you get arrested or in a serious violent fight for the cause. Yes.
I'm taking the low road. I'm punching them in the face. So that I attacked a couple guys.
Very fine people on both sides.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
So I punched him in the face and I ripped his mask off. And then I punched him again.
President Trump retweeted a video showing a supporter making a racist statement.
White power agents, clear now!
Very fine people on both sides.
Did Hitler do anything wrong? No! Fuck him! First, we said of the truth of Christ. Remember it! Yes, the time's
But how do you stop these people? You can't.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists?
It's not.
Do it, sir.
Say it. Very fine people on both sides.
Join me every Sunday afternoon for a new show where common citizens, you and I together, discuss with each other issues of today, where we demand proof and evidence is required, where we seek the truth and will not be silenced. Join me this coming Sunday afternoon and take part in America's oldest and most honored tradition.